everybody. This is my first YouTube booktube video, and I know it's kind of late, but I still want to do a November wrap up. So before we get started, if anybody wants to know, this lipstick, this is ColourPop. It's More Better. I don't know if you can see it, but it looks a little bit darker on camera than it actually is. But anyways, okay, that's ColourPop. Okay, so to get into my November wrap up, let's see, what should I start with? Okay, I think I'm gonna start with this book by, who's this by? Jessica Buchanan. It's called Impossible Odds. And basically, it's the story of a American foreign aid worker, and she went over to, like, she was in southern Africa, not mistaken, I think like the Sudan, and she basically got kidnapped. So I found out about this book because I was reading an excerpt of it in the Marie Claire magazine. I was like, oh, this sounds so interesting. So it basically tells the story of, you know, why she wanted to start doing foreign aid work in Africa. And then it goes on to tell about, you know, what happened when she gets kidnapped. And, you know, she already had like a pre-existing medical condition. So, you know, to be kidnapped and then you don't have your medications because you already have a medical condition, and then to be in less than sanitary conditions, walking through, you know, jungle or whatever, and or the savannah with all these guys and you've been kidnapped. So, I mean, I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. And if it had only been her telling her story, I would have given it a 5 out of 5 stars. But I guess this was co-written with Anthony Flacco, and he added some parts that weren't too relevant to me. Like, he told about like the wet seals, gave a background on them, who came to rescue her, and you know, while they're important, it's like, you know, thank you for coming to do that, but we really don't need to know what you were thinking during your childhood because it's not very pertinent to her story. So, I mean, those little parts that he added, and they also had some chapters where her husband basically gave commentary as far as how he felt throughout the whole thing while she was being kidnapped. And it was just kind of like, okay, I could have did without those 2 parts, and it would have been, in my opinion, it would have been better if it was just her narrative alone. But it was still a good story, and it was interesting. So, I mean, if you want to check it out, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, let's see. Okay. The next book that I'm going to review is going to be Zane, The Other Side of the Pillow. Now, Zane is one of my all-time favorite authors. I love her. I'm a Zane Sister Soldier fan forever, for life. So, okay. When we think of Zane, we always think, you know, oh my God, that's going to be an erotica book. And it's like, no, I mean, she does write other, you know, things. And it's not just like an urban-based story. So, I mean, this is about a girl who basically, not a girl, a woman, who dated like a bunch of jerks in her life. And the story starts out with her going to like this open mic night, and she kind of expresses like her frustrations and dating a bunch of jerks and blah blah blah. And so she ends up meeting this guy. So I don't want to tell you too much about what happens, but I think that it's a really, really cute love story. It's not like you see Zane and you say, ooh, that's erotica. No, it's like a really cute love story. And like, she meets this guy and things work out, and then things don't work out, but you'll have to read the book because it's like a really good twist, like towards the middle and the end, as far as like her and this guy's relationship. And then it's a twist between her and her best friend's relationship, because it's kind of one of those things like misery loves company. And so you'll kind of see, I don't want to say too much about it, but you'll kind of see what happens between her and her friend, and then her and her new kind of boyfriend or whatever. You'll see what relationships she keeps and what relationships she doesn't keep. But I think like all women of a certain age can relate to this book on some level. So, and it was a really cute love story. I was like, oh, that was so cute. Okay, so I give this book, I would say 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, moving on because I don't want this video to be like super long. So the next book that I read in the month of November would be The Tale of Genji. And I came across this when I took a undergrad like world lit class. And you know how you have to read like excerpts, whatever. So basically, this is considered the first novel ever written. It was written by a woman, Murasaki Shikibu. I think that's how you pronounce it. And so basically, this is supposed to take place in the, Han Court of Japan in the 11th century. So like I said before, it's considered the first novel ever written. And it's kind of an interesting story. It's about this prince, Genji, and it kind of tells like his stories, his adventures, all his romances with different people. And, it's good. Some of the parts are kind of like magical, or I guess you would say kind of magical, and then it's an abridged version, like the translation is abridged, and so some parts you kind of get lost, like wait, what just happened, or sometimes you have to reread things to kind of keep up with what characters, which character is which. So I mean, but it's still an interesting story. So I would give this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So, you could check it out if you have time. It's interesting to read it just because it is considered the first novel ever written by a woman. So, yeah, check it out if you have time. Okay, next. Okay. Here Comes the Sun. Here Comes the Sun. This is by Nicole Dennis Ben. Okay, so I picked this book up because I saw a lot of people talking about it. I can't remember her name, but she has a YouTube channel here, and I'll link her YouTube at the bottom probably. And I follow her. I love her book suggestions. So she was like talking about this book. So I was like, okay, I'll pick it up and give it a chance. And I read the back, and I was like, oh, this, it seems interesting. So it's basically about a mom and 2 sisters, and they live in Jamaica. I think it's supposed to be like around Montego Bay, the town of Riverbank. And so it's supposed to tell the story of an impoverished family, and how actually being poor, native to Jamaica is not like that glamorous tourist, experience that people who are just visiting would have. And it's, really tells the story of how it is to really be poor in Jamaica. And so I was like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. Like, probably learn a lot about the native culture. They'll probably have like some cool adventures in there. Like, I'll be able to be kind of like a fly on the wall and actually like see what happens, But, I mean, I just did not enjoy this book at all. I really wanted to love it. I really wanted to like it. The writing was super slow. I mean, every page I was just like, like, just let me hurry up and finish reading this, just because I was somewhat invested in the characters. Like the older sister, I did want to see how her story played out. The mom and the younger sister, I felt like the characters were very underdeveloped, like halfway through the book, and I really didn't get to understand their characters. And it was like I would probably say more than halfway through the book, and I was like halfway finished, and I didn't even understand what the plot of the book was. So I'm like, okay, the book is slow. I really don't really care, not invested in any of the characters, maybe except for the older sister. And it was just dreadfully slow. I did not know what the plot was. And the ending was just like, blah, the end. So, I mean, she did bring up some interesting themes as far as, color and what it means to be beautiful, kind of like the light skin versus the dark skin, which is not a new thing, but it was interesting to see that that theme also is relevant to other countries and not just in America because, that is an issue here. So, I mean, but other than that, it was just kind of like, yeah, okay. I mean, I didn't enjoy it. Another interesting thing, which is a pro, is that she did talk about like lesbian relationships and how they were severely like persecuted, which that was an important thing to bring up because that it just seems so barbaric to persecute somebody because of that. But that was an important thing to talk about. But other than that, it was just kind of like, okay. I'm just glad that this book is over. So I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. I'm sorry to anybody who loved it, but it was just dreadfully, painfully slow for me. And maybe I still don't know what the plot was, but okay, no, I'm just joking. But maybe I'm not. Okay, that's it. Okay, so the last books that I read for November were actually a series, and I read The Cartel 1, 2, and 3. These are like urban classics, The Cartel, and I really want to talk about this because I feel like sometimes urban literature does not get the recognition that it deserves. Just because it's an urban setting does not mean that the story isn't intriguing. It doesn't mean that it's not wonderfully written. It doesn't mean that the characters aren't, like developed. And it doesn't mean that it's not a story worth reading or or basically worth like the respect that it deserves just because it's an urban thing. So with that being said, I did read the first book, The Cartel. Okay, so I mean, I don't know if I really need to go into detail about what this book is about because I mean, everybody should pretty much know what the cartel is about. So it's basically about this family in Miami. They run a drug cartel. But I mean, you would think that they would be like, oh yeah, we have all this money, we run a drug cartel, and it's so glamorous. It is not that. It is the total opposite. It really kind of shows you what the ramifications are for, living that kind of lifestyle. And so I would say halfway through the book, I was like, oh, snap, like this is good. Like, the characters were so well developed. Like the one character, Mia Moore, oh my God, like she did so much dirt and like she was such a bad character, but I still loved her. I was like, oh, I know you do a bunch of bad stuff, but I still like you. So, and Carter, well, okay, let me stop. But anyways, okay, this book was really good. It had a really good cliffhanger. So after I read that, I got the second one. The second one was so good. Like, I really, 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 really enjoyed the second one. I was like, oh, that was so good. And then the last 2 pages, they put this crazy twist in the last 2 pages. And I had never seen a book do that before. And so I was like, dang, like that was crazy. Like, why would they take the chance on doing that? Because that was like a big risk. And I wasn't sure whether or not how that was going to work out for them. Because in the last 2 pages, they just put some crazy twists that I had never seen before in a book. So, well, in a series, trilogy, whatever. But this is a series because it's like 6 books. So I was like, wow, like why would they do that? That's such a big risk. So I got the third book. And I have to say I was kind of disappointed because the third book was just like, I mean, like, I don't know what to say. The third book was just kind of, I don't want to say boring because it wasn't exactly boring, but it was just like, I didn't really care for it. It was okay. But okay, so the first book I would give a 4 out of 5 stars. The second book, 5 out of 5 stars. And the third book, maybe like 3.5 out of 5 stars. But all in all, is it worth the read? Yes. Especially if you could only just dedicate the time to read the first two, you won't be disappointed. So, okay, that's the end of my November wrap up. So, I'll probably go ahead and film my December book haul because I've got a few books. So, I'll probably go ahead and film that right after this. Okay, bye.